Chick-fil-A says we are better together, and that is truly, truly meaningful. You have to believe that. That is true. We are truly better together. If you try to operate in a silo, if you try to do this by yourself, it's just going to be a lot harder than it needs to be.
Welcome to Build Your Culture Brand with Dr. Jay Rains. Successful leaders make building healthy culture a priority. Meet other leaders who are building a culture where people want to stay and know how to win together.
Hey leaders, welcome back to the Build Your Culture Brand podcast. I have with me today Consuela Jacobs from the Chick-fil-A in RedBird in Dallas, Texas. And Consuela, it's wonderful to have you on the show. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So today, for you listeners, we're going to be talking about a couple of topics. One of those is just this idea of going from, Consuela comes from an outside of Chick-fil-A, what we call an external candidate, and then just that journey. We'll have some fun behind the scenes stories to tell about that. And then also just talking today about what it takes to launch a strong, well-built culture. And she's almost a year into her first year as a Chick-fil-A operator. So Consuela, fun fact, I met you in September last year. It was around September 12th, something. And you walk up to me and you're like, I've been listening to your podcast, and it was the first time I've ever had that happen. Thank you so much. You're my one fan, like the one Leaders Q podcast fan out there. So thanks for being that one.
I cannot imagine I'm the only one, believe me, because Leaders Q was very much helpful on my journey to becoming a Chick-fil-A operator. So when I first started, embarked upon this journey, I was like trying to take in as much content as possible, trying to figure out how can I learn what it takes to be a Chick-fil-A owner operator? It's so daunting of a task, right? They tell you that it's easier to get into the CIA than it is to get to CFA, right? So it just feels like I am never going to accomplish this goal. And so especially for me, like I had a 20 plus career prior to making a decision to make this leap. And so I like to go into everything that I do, eyes wide open and understanding what is it going to take and knowing that I was making a big change for myself and for my family. And so I was like, all right, well, I'm leaving a big corporate career where I was an executive, like I was a vice president managing a team of buyers. And I'm like, what am I doing? Like, what am I doing? Going to leave this and going to go sell chicken? And how can I learn as much as possible before I do that? And stumbled upon your podcast, and it was just truly like a blessing to me and to my journey. And so seeing you there, and I was like kind of a little fangirling it a little bit, right? Like I was like, oh my God, like I listened to his podcast. So.
My team had so much fun with that, and they were so excited to meet you too. They worked so hard on the podcast, and especially Katie who helped produce this podcast. And so it was just fun to get to meet you. And I think the thing that really was just so helpful for me was to know, wow, you're saying this actually made a difference. It helped you, I guess, coming from outside of Chick-fil-A, it's hard to get to know the culture unless you know someone. And so I guess it sounds like you were able to listen to some of the people we'd interviewed, whether they were candidates or operators or whatever, and just kind of learn from their journey. So I'm glad that was helpful for you.
It was absolutely helpful. So thank you so much for what you do, and know that you're making an impact for sure. So if you don't believe that, you really do. I mean, I felt like I had to like scroll through my phone and show you on my phone that you were in my list.
Right. Like we needed proof, but you literally were like showing us your podcast catcher and just, yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much. That's very kind. Well, now you get a chance to contribute, and you have so much to contribute. So thank you for being a great leader. Your story is you kind of just described, you left from that executive retail world, and you made this leap into this crazy idea of opening up a location there in South Dallas, in an urban environment. In fact, I know that area very well. My parents lived not far from that location. And so it's exciting to see you grow and build a team. So yeah, tell us a little bit about that journey of deciding, like what was it that tipped you over and said, you know what, I'm going to do it. I'm going to apply to be a Chick-fil-A operator. By the way, last year, I just heard this yesterday, 68,000 people applied to become a Chick-fil-A operator. 200 are now at the selection point, and only 100 of them will get a
Wow.
location. So that's
Wow.
happening this week,
Yeah. Yeah.
even with some people that I'm talking to. So just
That's
for
awesome.
our listeners to understand, like you said, harder to get in the CFA than the CIA. But yeah, tell us a little bit about that tipping point in your journey.
Yeah, so it's a little bit of a crazy story, honestly. I graduated from Texas A&M University a really, really long time ago, and Chick-fil-A came to the campus of my university, and I could use what we called it back at the time, it's a long time ago, Sabisa bucks, in order to get Chick-fil-A sandwiches, and I thought it was the best thing in the world. So when I graduated college, I went back, and I'm from Houston. I moved back to Houston, and I kept telling everybody in my family, you know what, this Chick-fil-A thing is the best thing ever. Somebody should own a Chick-fil-A. Someone should own a Chick-fil-A. I told it to my mom. I told it to my boyfriend. Anytime, who's now my husband, anytime they were disgruntled with their job, I told them that they should go and pursue this Chick-fil-A owner operator journey. And they kept telling me no. They didn't want to do it. They were like, you do it. And to the point where I actually ended up having a conversation with an owner operator. I had a friend who worked for a consulting firm, and she was like, you know what? You keep mentioning this Chick-fil-A. Someone within our organization just quit and went to go and own a Chick-fil-A. Would you like to have a conversation with them? So literally probably had like a 15-minute conversation with this person.
Wow.
They told me about their journey. I've met him since then, or re-met him again, or since then, and he doesn't even remember the conversation because it was a really long time ago. He, of course, now owns three locations. At the time, he was going into a mall location, and he told me about the journey, and I was just like, okay, well, I'm a first generation college graduate, and I worked in retail, so I did what I thought was every girl's dream. I bought clothes for a living. And so I was like, how do I give up buying clothes for a living to go and sell chicken? And as a first generation college graduate, my family was like, really? You're going to go work fast food? Like they really didn't understand the concept either. And I really did love my job. Like I loved what I did. I'm getting to spend other people's money to buy clothes. So it was really an exciting journey as well. So I didn't pursue the opportunity because he, explained to me like you need to quit your job, and he even offered, he's like, if you want to come and work for me in the mall, and I was kind of like, do I want to do this? And so I felt like I had the weight of like my family pressure on me as well to
Yeah.
be like this major success for my family, and was not really clear on if making this leap to pursue Chick-fil-A was going to be, that right thing for my family. So I did not do it. Fast forward to 20 plus years later, COVID happened and I got laid off. My company filed for bankruptcy and I got laid off, clearly with a lot of other people during that COVID time, and was trying to figure out what I wanted to do next. I was homeschooling my kids, or not really homeschooling, but school wasn't open, teaching them from home. And I was like, okay, well, what am I doing? This is really tough, right? And so I went back and was like, all right, they kind of tell you, you should think about what you want to do when you're a kid and blah, blah, blah. And now I'd applied for additional retail jobs and just wasn't getting any traction because the stores weren't open because COVID had the stores not open. So I wasn't getting any traction with jobs. And my husband's like, you really should own your own business. You are really an excellent, merchant. You're an excellent business person. You should own your own business. And I was like, what am I going to do? And I thought about what did I want to do when I grew up? I wanted to be a doctor. I was like, I'm not going to go back to school and be a doctor. And I was like, at one point I thought about this Chick-fil-A thing. Why have I never pursued it? Why don't I pursue this opportunity? Read up on it. And like I said, was really scared because I thought I'm never going to get this. But I knew that if I did not at least try, I was going to have a lot of regret, and always wonder what could have happened, what would have happened, because it was also something that I mentioned 20 plus years before,
Right.
right? So it's kind of one of these
It's a
like full
dream.
circle,
Yeah.
yeah, full circle moment type of thing. And so I did. And so actually ended up saying, all right, hun, I'm going to go back to work. And my husband's like, yay, because as my husband said, you're actually continuing to spend money like you're a vice president, hun. And I was like, really, I am? He's like, yeah, you are. So I was like, well, guess what? I'm going back to work. He's like, great. And I'm going to go back to work and work at a Chick-fil-A fast food restaurant as a team member. So it was very gracious that I met my operator, Dwayne Johnston, in Humble, Texas, and he allowed me to work in his restaurant full time as a team member. Worked my way up to a team leader and loved it. While I pursued the opportunity to be a Chick-fil-A owner operator. And during the operator journey, I never felt confident that I had a sure in. I never felt like I'm going to get this. So there was one point in the journey that I was just like, that was the worst interview ever. I need to go get it. I need to go get a job. Like, there's no way I'm going to get this. I've got to go find a job. And so I did. And I still worked part time in the restaurant, but I went and found a full time job in an adjacent career. And like the day that I started my job, full time job, I got the email that we'd like to continue to get to know you. And I was like, if I would have known that, I would have stayed in the restaurant
Right.
full time, right?
Right.
Because
Right.
I just never felt confident that I was a sure in, because as
Yeah.
they say, it's easier to get into Harvard or some other institution than it is to get into Chick-fil-A. So now I've been an operator. I'm actually in year two. So we've been open 18 months. We opened November of 2023, and I was fortunate enough to open Chick-fil-A's 3,000th restaurant. So very excited about that. And so the restaurant was bestowed that honor and in November 9th. So I had a really big celebration where Andrew Kathy came down to the restaurant and was for our grand opening. So it's really amazing, and amazing to be a part of the Chick-fil-A brand. So.
I remember that story coming out. I remember seeing your picture. This was before we ever met, and I was thinking, "Wow, what isn't that incredible? We've crossed 3,000. That Chick-fil-A Corporation's crossed 3,000, and here it is in Texas. And what an amazing leader! So good for you for being that 3,000th opening. You and I talked. Thank you for sharing your story too. That's an incredible journey, and just that hunt and search, and even the confidence piece that you mixed in there as you kind of moving into the grand opening. So now you're selected for a specific location there at RedBird in South Dallas, and then and you're moving into grand opening. What? Let's say someone's listening right now and they're about to open their business or even their Chick-fil-A. What advice would you give them? Maybe a couple of do's, like you do it over again, and maybe a couple of don'ts. What maybe you wish you hadn't done or would do differently?
Oh gosh, that's a really good question. Do's that I would do over again. I would keep a connection. I think you and I talked about this, and don't do this on your own. You know, Chick-fil-A says we are better together, and that is truly, truly meaningful. And you have to believe that. That is true. We are truly better together. If you try to operate in a silo, if you try to do this by yourself, you are going to be I wouldn't say you're going to fail, but it's just going to be a lot harder than it needs to be. There are so many operators out here that want to help. So when I opened my restaurant, I had like probably like 4 or 5 different groups, like just different even text chains and people that I could call on and talk to, and different text. I had a grand opening text chain that I would text people who had that were grand opening around the same time that I was, just to understand, like, okay, what are you doing right now? What phase are you in? What should I be looking at? What should I be thinking about right now in this grand opening environment? Are you hiring right now, or how are you going about hiring? I had an urban environment text chain. What should I be thinking about as far as the safety of my team members? What should I be thinking about as far as establishing culture of my team members? I had my fundamentals group text chain. I had a female operator text chain. I had my Dallas South, my Dallas operator group text chain. Local to the Dallas area. Like, what can I think about that's
Right.
just truly about Dallas? So just really, and then I had, my Houston text chain of the people that I had met in Houston. I had, I had a text chain with people that I knew that were great at marketing, or, great at this. And so I just really leaned into all of those different avenues and different groups of people, and really used my village, honestly, in order to make me better. There were days that were really tough, right? Before I opened the store, there were days that were really tough. After I opened this store, there were days that I thought I was the only one that was dealing with these types of things. And I'd shoot out a text and they'd just be like, oh my gosh, yeah, absolutely, same. Um, so that would be definitely a do. Another do would be, and I didn't start with this, but this would be a do that I would tell people that I added later that one of the people in the text chain told me. I started a gratitude journal. And just they were like, just find one thing every single day that you are grateful for. And it can be as simple as I walked upon Jeremiah and he said, my pleasure, right? And yesterday he didn't. And because I just thought, when you open your restaurant, you are the worst Chick-fil-A in the chain, like especially in a grand opening
True,
environment,
right?
right?
It's
And the
guaranteed,
cust
right?
is guaranteed. It is guaranteed. And the guests tell you that you are the worst Chick-fil-A in the chain. They
Yeah,
constantly tell you that. They remind you that every single day. And you take that on and you feel very defeated. And I just could not find the bright spots for a really long time. And an operator said, just write down one good thing. And that gratitude kind of just, it really builds and it really snowballs. And so I started that. I don't do it now, still, I don't do it anymore, but I really kind of feel like some days I should go back to it. But I really feel like it helped me that at the end of my day, I just would write down like one thing. Sometimes it would be a paragraph, sometimes it would be one sentence. And it was just really helpful to keep me back focused to be like, I asked for this, and there is gratitude in this, and there is gratefulness in this. So I would say that would be another do.
what a great
Some
growth mindset tip, though. I mean, think about, the whole world's talking about growth mindset and how that gratitude just points your nose, points your brain, points your heart in that direction of, okay, yeah, all that's happening, but I am going to notice this thing and be grateful. I love that.
Yes,
Great tip.
it was definitely very beneficial because I could not see that. I couldn't see it. I just could not see it. Like, and so when he said that, I was like, you're right. Like we are getting 1% better. And then also I think the third tip would be truly focusing on just one thing at a time. Like there are going to be so many things that are broken. There are going to be so many things that you can't do right. Obviously, you don't want to get anybody sick, right? So you want to make sure that food safety is a priority. But if everything's falling apart, like make sure your food is going out safe, but then focus on one thing at a time. Like we took the old, at the time that I opened, it was the old winning hearts every day. And we just took that heart and broke it down. And I'm like, all right, we're going to tackle this month. All right, we're going to tackle this next thing the next month. And then we're going to get better at this thing the next month. And we kind of just made a plan and just was like, and we kind of like just had to try to block out all the other noise and was like, all right, we're just not going to look at, like I at least personally was like, I'm not going to look at the CEMs. I'm not going to look at
Yeah,
that. I had somebody assigned to do that. And I was like, just don't tell me because I took it really personally because
right.
I was, I'm used to being good and I wanted to be successful and I
Sure.
wanted us to be great. And I came from a store that had operated for 15 years and I thought that they were an amazing store and they did everything fantastic, right? And so that was hard. So that would be the things that I feel like I did well. And some things I didn't do well at the beginning, right? But I got to it as quickly as I could with the advice of that village, which was the first thing. And things that I would do over. Oh gosh, I'm sure there are so many. I'd say comparison is the thief of joy. Um, and so things that I would do over is I felt like I compared too much. I was too hard on myself and I was too hard on the team. You want to set the standard. You don't want to just be like, okay, it's okay that we suck, right? It's okay that we're the worst Chick-fil-A in the shade and we're going to stay there. But just like I said, taking one thing at a time and, how do you eat an elephant? Like just biting off one thing at a time. And I felt like I kind of went in a little guns a-blazing and was like, we suck at everything and we got to fix everything. And that was just really not the best
Yeah.
approach. It wasn't good for my health. It wasn't good for, I mean, not that I had any health challenges, but I felt like my blood pressure was probably way through the roof. And it wasn't good for the team or for the morale of the team. So,
What was that point in that timeline where you felt like you could kind of take a breath? I mean, what was it? 6 months in, 9 months in, 3 months? What was that point where you felt a little bit more? Not that everything's perfect now, but you just weren't so much underwater.
um, I feel like I went through different phases of that, right? So I
Okay.
feel like like I feel like because I had a good network, I feel like that they really advised me really well. So I wouldn't say that it was anything that I did personally well. I feel like the best thing I did was taking advice from people who were much smarter than me, right? Um, and so like we opened in November. For in December, I took like a little mini vacation with my family. And it was only 3 days, but I felt like, I was very nervous. I was definitely on my phone checking CFA now. I was definitely texting, but at least it was like
Good
a
for you,
good
though.
like break for my
Yeah.
family, right? Um, I'd say, but then when I went to Next in February, I did not enjoy Next at all because I was like,
Mm.
I should be at my store. I need to be with my team. So I'd say the first time, I'd say it probably was month 6 that I
Okay.
was basically like, okay, they got it. And it wasn't that they didn't probably have it before. It was just more, it was more about the trust, if that makes sense. Um, I did not, I needed to trust them and they needed to trust me. So it was really about establishing that trust. And I think that that was really the biggest issue for me was the trust. Um, and that's a two-way street, right? Like the team has to learn to trust you. You've got to learn to trust the team. And so that was, I had to settle in that and be like, these are leaders that I've never worked with them before. They've never worked with me before. And so it took about 6 months for that trust to really be established. But they were doing a good job. They were doing a bad job, right? They were really doing
Right.
a good
Some
job. So,
so in what I hear you describing is they had every right for you to for them to have your trust.
yes.
There was just this internal thing going on inside you where you had to come to that place. I'm really curious about this trust topic. If we could dive a little bit into that, like what are some best practices if you're trying to build trust, you've got this brand new team or a new team member, what are some ways to get to that trust maybe a little bit faster or to know that you've gotten to that place of trust? What would you
Oh my gosh.
advise there?
I wish I knew the answer. I'm going to tell you because I'm still building trust with my team.
Okay.
I am still working to, like, we've built trust in one area, right? Now we're building trust in different
Mm,
areas. So as I'm learning to let things go, as like I have a leader who wants to go into LDP, or I actually have two of my directors that want to go into LDP. I have another one that wants to apply externally as an operator, obviously from the restaurant. And so there are things that I have to work towards to get them ready for that, right? And so in doing that, I have to let more of the things that I have been very much like this to go so that I can prepare them on their journey. And so I'm still on that trust building journey with them, right?
oh, that's so good. I think for the listener benefit, just to kind of explain, I'm hearing you say that for their benefit. You think about the layers, and you can add to this too, the layers in your business that these leaders are in, and the layers of information that they might have access to, like the financial return report or other reports. And so some of those, they're yours, it's your business. And so kind of unlocking the layers of that and letting them in, that takes more trust. Yeah. And they need to experience it in order to be able to talk about it in their interviews. So it's great that you point out those. I would say I think of trust as kind of like an onion. It
Yes,
has layers. And
yes, exactly.
so it sounds like you're hitting some new layers of
Yes,
trust.
yes, agreed. Yes, I would
So
agree with that. Definitely hitting new layers of trust. So,
so then, Consuela, I think about this layers of trust, and one, well, maybe another way to think of it is, at what point, or what was it that helped you go on your longest vacation? Right, you've been doing this for over 18 months. You're leaving the business, leaving it in their hands. How did y'all get to that place of trust?
yeah. You mentioned like how do you build trust, right? And like I said, I think and I thought you have a great analogy of it is like an onion, right? You continue to peel back all the layers. And then in an environment of and I say retail, I apologize, but in an environment of the restaurant industry where you do have sometimes you have turnover, right? Like I'm very fortunate that my top leaders have been with me since I opened the restaurant. But you do have to think about, well, what happens when you have a new level of leadership? Then you have to work on building that other trust. But some of that is also building trust within myself as a leader, especially when you grand open a restaurant. And you have to think about, I've moved from I had built up a trust as myself in retail, but I did not build up myself in trusting as a Chick-fil-A operator. So I'm working on building trust with my leaders in the restaurant in tandem with working on building trust with myself as a new restaurant
That's
owner, a new
so
business
good.
owner. So all of those
Yeah.
that trust factor is a little bit more complicated, right? So it brings in a lot of, I feel like, different dynamics that you wouldn't think about. Um, so it's not just, oh, I take them to lunch and I get to know them on a personal level, because those are great ways to build trust, right? But you also then have to build trust within yourself to say, you know, am I, how, can I do this, right? And how do I feel comfortable with doing this? And what maybe got me here isn't going to get me there. How do I pivot and do it this way versus that way? And so some of the ways that I feel like we have worked to build trust, honestly, have really been a lot of open communication. We talk on constantly. They have to trust that they can depend on me. You and I have talked about this. Me being present in the restaurant is another way that they can build trust. Them seeing me, they've seen me open, they've seen me close, they've seen me work alongside of them. I have always, as a leader, no matter what industry I've been in, I've told them, I'm like, I can, I will do what you do if I need to, right? Like I don't want to have to, but if I need to, I'll jump in and bread if I need to, right? And sometimes I will just to build that trust or just to build that camaraderie, right? And I'll be like, come on,
Right.
I'm putting a hairnet on and I'm gonna sit here and bread chicken with you, or I'm gonna put the hairnet on and I'm gonna,
Yeah.
bag or put nuggets in a box, and we're going to talk about your life, and we're going to talk about your family, or we're going to talk about your goals, and we're going to talk about your aspirations. Another way that we've worked to build trust is I've asked my leaders for their own personal development plan. I've asked them, what are their goals, what are their aspirations. So it's definitely an evolving thing of building trust and getting to know who they are, getting to know their story, getting to know, Chick-fil-A talks a lot about your why, right? Getting to know their why. Why are they here? What are they looking to get out of it? And sometimes it's just a job, right? And that's perfectly fine too. If it's just the job, then that's wonderful. And then what do you want to do beyond this? Or where do you want to, like, is there a big trip you want to go on? Is there any big dreams or goals that you want? And how can I help you achieve that? So we've been really working on, really establishing that foundation. And then in that building trust, they say clarity, being clear, and then me knowing who I am. I feel like I tell them a lot about who I am and what my expectations are versus them having to guess. I'm like, all right, guys, these are my trust builders and these are my trust takers, right? These are the things that you can do to earn my trust, and these are the things that you can do to take my trust. Like these are deal breakers for me, and these are my
That's so good.
non-negotiables.
That's so
Um,
good.
so just so that they understand, like, and sometimes I know what they were before, and I've also identified some new ones that didn't exist before in my old environment,
Right.
that in my old
Right.
environment. So I try to be clear on to them what those things are as well. And then I really try to just let them talk. I really try to say, I tell them all the time, like, you will not hurt my feelings. I truly don't, I'm not that person that's really sensitive. Like, tell me what you feel. Tell me what you think. If you don't like it, tell me. And I was like, it's truly a democracy until it comes time to make a final decision. I'm going to make that final decision, but I want to hear from you. I want to know what you think. I want you to feel like your voice is heard. But yes, if there has to be a final decision that's going to be made, then definitely it's going to be made by me. But I want you to feel like you have
Sure.
input. So,
Yeah, that's so good.
um,
I love that idea of, several ideas in there. One of them that I really wanted to latch onto was that idea of them helping with their personal development plan. I mean, so many of the workers today in that generation, that upcoming generation, we used to say, "Hey, I'll share with you my vision. I want you to join me on my vision." These days, you still have your vision, but you have to go, like you're talking about, what do you want to accomplish? Let's see how what you want to accomplish and what I want to accomplish are aligned, and let's create a personal development plan that helps us both. And I think you're doing it. It sounds like you're really listening to them and developing it from their heart and mind. So
Yes.
congratulations on that.
Well, thank you. So this year, my leaders have decided we're going after symbol. And I will tell you at the
Okay.
beginning of the year, like, I was like, we are never like, really? But I was like, okay, guys, if you guys want to go after symbol, then fine. You guys put together a plan. I'm going to do what I can to support you. But like, this is, you guys are running this, right? And so they are like, they're taking it on. Like, I'm really impressed with them by doing that. And so, like, to me, that's also a way to build trust. Like, I am allowing them to come up with ideas and things of the business, and I'm like, okay, let me know what you need. How can I make it happen?
There you go.
You know,
That would be
and
incredible.
but
Symbol,
I'm
a
like, but
symbol
I
in
get
a
a
year
car.
like
Like,
this. Yeah.
yeah,
And you get
yeah,
a car. I
yeah.
mean, what a challenging year to do symbol, but man, yeah, if they have that in their sights, it's symbol for those of you who may not know, it's a 20% growth with some other stipulations, but 20% growth in revenue compared to last year. So, wow, that would be amazing. I think you
It
should go
would be
for it.
amazing. I don't know if we're going to hit it or not, but that is the goal. So let me just make that caveat, right? If we're,
Sure, I understand.
we're at the end of
I
May, that
understand.
we have a lot of year left to happen before that happens.
That's right.
But that is the caveat. So that is my disclaimer, just in case.
But
And I'm knocking on wood
yes,
too.
no, but no, absolutely. And it would be great if you get it. But I think the bigger win that I'm hearing in that is that your team latched onto a vision and they're inspiring growth. I mean, one of the questions I like to ask the leaders that I coach is, will your if you stepped away from your business, had to be gone for 3 or 4 weeks, would your business go down? Would it stay the same or would it excel? And to hear your team aiming for something bigger than today or last year tells me that they're hungry, they want to grow, they want to take on challenges. And that's a beautiful picture.
Yes, I'm very excited about that. And we'll see, because I have already given them a lot of feedback that next year I really want to I want to take a 3-week vacation if possible. So we'll see if that
Okay.
happens. So,
Hey, this will be
yeah.
good.
Yes, my family and I have never
Good deal.
done a long time out of the country, so we're going to see if I can make that happen next year. So,
Sounds like a great goal. Consuelo, I love your story. I love the fact that you're the 3,000th store that was open and how that was celebrated, and just this journey from executive retail into Chick-fil-A. Um, for those, maybe there's someone listening who's you several years ago, right? And you're looking on the internet and you find this Leaders Cube Builds Your Culture Brand podcast that has Chick-fil-A people often on the show. Um, Speak to them. I'll just give you the camera. Speak to them. What would you advise them in their journey as far as, like, how do they understand Chick-fil-A? If they want to be a Chick-fil-A owner or operator, what would be a few things they should do to be ready for those interviews and for that journey?
I would say if you're a true external like me, which there are a lot of true externals that have reached out to me, the first thing you should honestly do is go to the internet, do as much research as possible. Go to LinkedIn, do as much research as possible on LinkedIn. There's webinars and things like that, but even that doesn't tell as much information. I firm believer in the books. There are tons of books out there. There's Truett books. You need to read all of those things, and find out as much as possible. I've told you this before, that I'm a firm believer in being a student of the business, being a student of anything that you're going to go into and do. Knowing as much as information as possible, going in eyes wide open. And so you really need to do that. So before you pick up the phone and say, hey, I want to talk to an operator, I would really ask, because an operator's time is very valuable. They are running a multi-million-dollar business, and they have a large staff of anywhere from 75 to 150. And if you're a multi-unit operator, maybe 250 people that you're managing. And so as much information as you can gather on your own independently to go into the opportunity as well knowledgeable as possible really shows your commitment level to me, because I've had people come to me and they had not read a Truett book, or they had not, they were like, my grandmother wants to open a Chick-fil-A, and she's 85 and she wants to own one, and I'm like, okay, well, that's kind of not how that works, and I'm going to run it for her. And so and I have people in my team that want to be operators that I'm trying to pour into. And while I want to, I represent the brand and I want to represent the brand well. And I want to be a supporter of anyone who's interested, because the more that we can have excellent operators and build the brand, the better. But if you can do your research and do your due diligence, that is going to help you a long way, because there is a lot of information out there. So that's where I would start. Podcasts, obviously, such as Leaders Q. There's so many podcasts out there. And then pick up the phone and reach out to someone. And so before you do that, before you pick up the phone and say, hey, can I have a moment of your time? Because obviously, as we know, people's time is very valuable. I would just really challenge everyone to do as much research as they can independently, and then pick up the phone and call someone and ask, hey, can I work in your restaurant? Can I volunteer some hours in your restaurant? Can I come and service the guests and understand, or shadow you for a day, or shadow someone on your team for a day? And, I understand that it may not be something someone can do like what I did, which is be like, I'm just going to work full time as a team member. Whatever you're paying your team members, that's what I want to make. I'm good. And I was very honest about that. And that is what happened. And I did that and I loved it. And I was a part of the team. And I understand that that may not be something that someone else can do, but just understanding that there's just so much information out there that you can get and learn the lingo, because it is very daunting. And all the externals, there's a lot of value in an external operator. And there's a lot of value in an internal operator. I mean, there's so much value. Like, I felt intimidated by all the internal operators. But I also know that I feel like I'm doing a decent job in year two, as a true external operator, but I wouldn't be here without, all the connections I made from internal and external operators alike. And so just do your research and do your due diligence, because there's a lot of ways that you can get to the finish line. So that would be my advice.
What great advice. That's amazing advice. And I don't know that advice is said enough. There is so much, if you, like you just said, find every Truett Cathy book. There's several out there, biographies, and also his, philosophy of leadership and other parts to that. Anything by Mark Miller. Mark Miller
Yeah,
was the leadership
absolutely.
vice president for so many years. And they spent, I know Mark, they spent $10 million in research on leadership and then wrote
Hmm.
books about it. So lots to talk about. Yeah, those are some great nuggets of advice. Thank you for sharing that for our listeners. So, Consuela, I look forward to talking to you down the road when we can talk more about what's happening in year 2 and 3. Here you are entering into those phases, and just excited about. And we've got to find out, how did your 3-week vacation go? So I want to talk to you right after that and see how did that go, and what were the things you got done in the trust department to be able to do that. So I want to hear more about that. Thanks for your time and just being our number one podcast listener. We appreciate it.
I don't know about the number one podcast listener, but I am definitely a fan and definitely a believer in Build Your Culture brand. And I will tell any and everybody that they should be picking up the podcast and listening to it. So I think I just did. So if you don't listen to it, you need to.
There you
There
go.
are so many great episodes out. I have re-listened to a few even now. And I still listen to your podcast today, even as an operator, because there's so many nuggets that I can still learn on the journey. So don't ever stop being a learner. Don't ever stop being a student of the business. It would be a true last parting words to anyone listening. So thank you for all you do for Chick-fil-A, for the brand, and for the community.
Thank you. Thank you. So if you're listening, take her advice. Hit that subscribe button, follow us, share about us, maybe leave a review on the podcatcher that you watch. We love those 5-star reviews. Please leave some of those. And so we just want to be seen and share stories like Consuela's to the world. So thank you, and we'll see you again on our next episode.
Thank you for listening to Build Your Culture Brand with Dr. Jay Rains. If you enjoyed this podcast, please like, comment, and share. See you next time.